Well, good afternoon, everyone. I enjoy these summits. I get inspired by them. I'm always finding those nuggets, and I hope today you'll find a nugget or two in what I say and not offense. I'm going to talk about things in my lifetime as how I taught school and worked extension, but trying to ranch the whole time. And out in Newell, South Dakota, many of you are familiar with it, we have 57,000 acres of irrigated farmland, all of which should have been left grasslands in 1900. But there it is. It's a microcosm of what not to do. And so we'll touch on a few of those things, but this is where we're at. You kind of look at some of those things that we heard today. I'm going to repeat them, and hopefully it'll be a different slant on some of that. So this is where we're at. Joe Dickey took that picture, so I'll give credit to him. Again, I've been trying to ranch my whole life. I started out in the mid '80s after college, and you know what those are like, and things are tough, and we had to start it from zero and go and have a day job at the same time. Fourth generation, where I'm at, and my folks, which we just took that place over here a couple of years ago, I'll be the fifth generation on that place managing it. So we're still there. And you know why? We were too poor to leave. And so we got to figure that out, and that goes to that transition plan. We got to get things in place. And it's that old deal, people say, well, that doesn't work in my area. I would compete with just about anyone about how sorry our soils are and how challenging those are. There we go. And just like anybody, we have ranch goals, we have personal goals, what we want to do with our family, and what we want to get out of that ranching deal. You know, in teaching school and working extension, I was not home. And so all these things that these guys, these concepts were coming up with, I was doing that, but I didn't know I was doing it. I went to no-till farming not because it was the right thing to do, is because I didn't have time to sit on a tractor. I put out bales for a week for cows to eat, not because I knew bale grazing was a thing, it's because I was teaching school, and it sucks trying to fire up an old open cab tractor in the morning before you go to school. So those things happen by accident, so I claim nothing. And I claim that I've never had an original idea either, and I'm thankful of the leadership that's in this room, and I'm humbled to be here because a lot of these guys have taught me more than I've shared with them. You know, this is a perspective I want to put out there and get some of those paradigms in. You know, Duroc hit on a lot of good points there, and this becomes the social part of it that we as ranchers don't think about. Do you think, remember back in the early 90s when the Nature Conservancy and the World Wildlife Fund and all these NGOs were bad things, they were evil, and we were going to county commissioner meetings, and we were studying NEPAs, National Environmental Protection Act, and how we put our customs and cultures in place so they don't come in and take our property and tell us how to ranch. You remember that? Some of you may. And it was scary, and we were reactionary to that. And now look at us, we actually get along. We've got common purpose, common goals. We're serving each other, and it comes to a greater thing, doesn't it? Us as ranchers were frightened of other people coming in and dictating what we were going to do. And it upset the whole apple cart here. And amazing, the vision and the patience that people have had that are in this room that I am just, amazed by and thankful that they had that leadership, that they had the calmness. I'm a good blow-up kind of person, but these other guys are just steady. And they can talk to people they don't agree with. I get in that room, and that's not so pretty. But anyway, we're looking at 330 million people in the U.S., 9 billion in the world by 2050. That's a hell of a carrying capacity. We start talking stocking rates. And when did that start? That started after World War II. That thing was running pretty flat until then. And we've jumped that. And then these 330 million people have put our percentage down. We've already dropped, 250,000 or better in farmers. And guess how they look at us? We are wealthy, huge asset holding people that those in the cities got their little shiny car and their day job, and they're looking at us with millions of dollars in holdings. Do you think they're going to have sympathy for us? We're the problem, aren't we? We're the problem to pollution. We're the problem to our water problems. That's where that scary thing is. Our voice is so small. But that's where I would just turn that around and say what this group is doing is the solution. And think about that. When Pete and Laura asked me to talk, and you try to think about what you're going to talk about, and I really didn't know, Anthony and I are getting later in the day, so all you guys have said everything we're going to say, so we got to come up with something different. But how are we going to look at this? How are we going to deal with what people are going to perceive us? And that's a challenge. This group is making that difference. And you think about John Kennedy's speech, which some of you probably were alive enough to hear it. I wasn't. You were. The speech to go to the moon. So just take the word moon out and put in grassland recovery. So if you Google that and YouTube it and look it up, that's what we're doing. That is huge. The impact that we, farmers and ranchers, have globally to change the outcome of this world at a 9 billion people carrying capacity. And those 330 million in this US are going to point at us as that problem. And they should be pointing back at themselves, those other 3 or 4 fingers. We've got to educate them. We're doing a good job with ourselves. Lots of that. But you guys, each one of you, you get in an elevator with one of your city cousins, you need to let them know what we're doing and be excited about it. Those other 2 things are kind of neat there. You as farmers and ranchers, you have the consumer or the city cousin's trust. And that's from a Farm Bureau survey. But look at that other one. 1 in 5 trust what we would call modern agriculture or industrialized agriculture. So when there's going to be water pollution problems, they're going to shut us down. And it's not us, because we've got the solutions, but they're just going to throw us in with the rest. And so please, be that advocate. Every cousin you got, let them know. Let them know what you're up to. This one got me. I used this in Chicago in October. It's 2024. And we killed 5 or 6 people in this dust storm on the interstate in 2024? Again, do you think our city cousins are going to put up with that? We're going to get regulated to death. And this is in Illinois, where that should never happen. They actually get rainfall. Oh my. So I'm trying to throw some alarm bells out, but at the same time, we've got to be careful that we get this across. And thank goodness some of you are doing that. The policy piece tomorrow afternoon, we've got to get, think about that. So much of people's reality is their perception. It doesn't matter if Duroc shows all that stuff, unless they see how it's going to benefit them and make their lives better, you're blowing smoke. And we've got to have that piece in there. And this is another little bit of that, probably hard to read, but that's how we impact the environment. We're polluting the Gulf of Mexico. There's a dead zone like none other. We're knocking out wildlife and insect species. We're poisoning the water. They start putting these things up. We're farmers and ranchers. We're not set up to battle this. And we know how that can be a runaway, and people get on those platforms and use that for their own personal gain, not that they necessarily care about the environment. So, it's just more to support our cause and that power that we have. And I read this long ago, and I know it's a lot of words, and this particular one I copied out of the Savory Institute's introduction. But I heard this 15 years ago or better, and that just has not left me, because that's us. That when people start to point those fingers at me, why are we pumping carbon into the ground? Why aren't we sequestering it? Why? And we know why, because it's industrialization. Those corporations can benefit by doing that themselves. Who controls the grasslands? We do. Does that serve them? The only way we can figure out how to get them to have that want to improve grasslands is it's got to benefit them through us. And those are some of those challenges. But so then you ask, what's 12 billion acres? Do that globally. And that's like North America and South America tied together. The other thing that I enjoy regarding the soil health deal, and I suspect most of you know this, but not everybody gets it, and it was kind of an aha for me too, is that soil health principles that we push towards cropland, where did it come from? It comes from grassland management. It's rangeland management 101 applied to cropland. And by golly, if it doesn't work, I keep trying to break the system and it doesn't break. It bends a little bit, but it'll recover. And that's those 5 basic principles, which most of you know, but think about that on a grassland point of view. You don't over disturb the soil, so negative animal impact too much can cause issues. So we don't want to disturb the rangelands. We want to leave plenty of residue, both to catch snow in our country, but also put carbon back to the ground. Those living roots are huge, and we're finding out more about that. And out in our country, in Newell, South Dakota, and western South Dakota, we're forage farmers. So we're probably even worse sinners than the crop farmers because we take everything. We graze it down with our swathers right down to that, and then we leave, right? And we do that not for a couple of years, we do that 20, 30 years. And it is amazing how forgiving those soils can be when you quit and you start turning that around. Run your cutters higher, don't take as much, leave some residue, try different crops, rotation some livestock into that. It all works. It's all there. We just got to apply those things of rangeland management to that cropland. Perennials, unbelievable what they do. I had a deal where I keep trying to break the system. I've got irrigated ground, so I've got this alfalfa in. I've got it under pivot. Started out at 3.5% organic matter. I said, okay, I'm going to keep it in alfalfa, and I'm going to take it out when that organic matter number breaks and starts to drop. That was 7 years ago, and I'm still in the same field. I'm up to 7. What's going on? So I asked a soil scientist, what's going on? We're pumping more energy from the sun into the ground than we're taking out. 5 ton an acre of hay we're taking out of that ground every year, 7 years. And we're growing organic matter. So that's amazing. And of course then earthworms follow the legumes. So I got 34 earthworms per acre. I knew this was going to go fast. Those practices are easily adapted to cropland. And this stuff keeps swelling and growing because it works. It's not going to go away. That's how we're set up. We got quarter-mile runs. We got a mid-rib of electric fence and water lines down the middle. We're mob grazing cattle and sheep together, just like bison and deer and antelope and elk followed each other. It all works. Nature didn't do that by accident. And so if we can remember that, there we go. And so I'll touch on that, those multi-species things. Again, I grew up that way. Everyone in northwest South Dakota is sheep and cattle. That's what you did to make it work. And so, yeah, why not? You know, a cow, our grasslands are 80% grass. Guess what cows eat most of? Grass. And sheep and goats need a little better diet, so they'll work on the forbs and shrubs. Makes sense. Those aren't accidents, and we can replicate those deals. Another thing I'll touch on is the target grazing thing is even getting bigger as we get technology into that. It works. That's got years and years of research behind it. Solar grazing. Yeah, did you go by New Underwood? I don't know how many acres of solar panels. They're grazing them. Just reviewed a deal down for the target grazing handbook that we're updating. It'll be out in June. One guy started with 350 sheep. That was in 2020, solar grazing. He's now up to 5,200 head of sheep. In 2023, plans to double in 2024. $5 to $15 an acre grazing solar fields. Why don't you use goats? Goats jump up on solar panels and break them. And so you can see some of that, touch on the difference of the grazing. Yeah, and those species work. The diversity in animals is every bit as important as diversity in the rangeland plant life. And then there's that indirect thing we get out of it. We get wool. It's a great natural regenerative fiber which sequesters carbon to no end because it's all carbon. And we get meat, and we're not impacting our carrying capacity on our livestock. And guess what? You don't have to own them. When I was in the sheep extension, what was one of the biggest limiting things to people getting into the sheep industry or into agriculture? The land resource. Here you can work with folks to get some other animals on that land. You don't have to own them. Because you know what happens when you own goats? You'll never go to heaven. This, at least me. So there's a lot of opportunities for those things. You know, multi-grazing, but again, I didn't, until I start looking at it harder, that's just what we did, and that's the way it worked out. And it certainly fit our prairies in the northern plains with all the heavy clays and the dense clay prairies and the western wheatgrass. Can you do that, Laura? There we go. And those are some of the things you have to work into it and think about when you put in multi-species. They're not deal breakers, but they just have to be worked around. You don't put a 4-foot water tank in. You got to put a sheep ramp in it when you do, just like a bird ramp, so they walk out. It works. Next one, Laura. Target grazing, I'll hit real fast as my time's running up. We did this project with the BLM on Fort Meade and Dalmatian toadflax, and all I did was replicate what had been done. And so if you hit that slide again, there's that target grazing handbook. You can go to the American Sheep Industry's website, sheepusa.org, and find it if you want that, or get a hold of me. But the new version's coming out in July. And we'll have, what's nice about that handbook, it talks about how to make grazing contracts and all the animal welfare stuff that needs to go into it too, because remember who's watching. And we've got to keep our city cousins happy knowing we're doing the best we can with our livestock and our grasslands. You hit that again, Laura. So that public interface is super important when we look at these opportunities. Like when we were doing this grazing deal, I hired a guy by the name of Doug Pavel to manage this. And he's out there, he's putting water out and moving fence, and it's right along the Centennial Trail. And so you got hikers and bikers and horsemen wondering what we're doing with these sheep there. And if you know Doug, they got an understanding of it by the time they were done. He explained it all, and then they thought that was the greatest thing ever. So those are those things you want to do. Next one, please. I tell you, it took us, we put those sheep into that Dalmatian toad flax. These are mine, and they never seen it before. It took them 4 days. And so if you hit that slide again, go back 2, would you, Laura? If you can kind of see that 4 days, and they ate everything except the toad flax. They even ate prairie sandreed old growth residue before they ate the toad flax. And once they got on it, then they ate more every week. And by the end of 2 weeks, we had them where we turn them in. And if you'd advance that slide, we cleaned it up, and that's recovery. It works. And then you need to come back in again and catch it when it recovers and knock it down. Here we go again, up in our country, sweet clover, and we're going to have it again this year. We're going to have sweet clover that tall, aren't we, Larry? It's going to be there. So, sheep love sweet clover. Did you hit that again? The newer technologies, and to think about that, technology advances exponentially, so it's just going to go boom. So if you hit the next slide, these sheep here are collared with virtual fence collars, and I can manage them from my phone. So that opens up a whole host of ground that we can graze, cropland included, that wouldn't otherwise have that opportunity. And it's interesting, when I started in extension in 2010, 11, I couldn't get a lot of government agencies to even want to talk about putting sheep on. And now I have no problems finding that. And they want to do it because it is the right solution. You want to hit that again? So that's some of the virtual fence and potential for custom grazing, even like Ben talked about. Telling somebody they can come graze for free is not free. There's so much to moving livestock and managing water and that. So you need to kind of expect to be paying them to do you a target grazing or a weed control service. So, and then these unintended consequences. Insects come, and then if you hit it again, World Wildlife Fund did this survey. I never set out to raise birds. I'm trying to ranch. But these are these unintended things which are great, which again the city cousins need to know about that you're doing. You have that impact if you're mimicking nature. So again, and I'll try to wrap it up here, a collaboration with our partners is huge. We cannot do it without each other. Each one of us brings a piece of knowledge and a piece of inspiration and enthusiasm that can help each other. Ranchers have the land mass. Other organizations have the money or the inspiration or ideas to do things, and we all succeed or become successful from it. So with that, I'll leave that and I can visit later. Thank you.